the entire discussion about hybrid organization, social enterprise is a very, very interesting, very intriguing route that we can look into, because there people combine social outcomes with business principles, and this helps us to move away from this traditional view on like the only thing that counts is profitability and profit maximization. So I think that's very interesting, very inspiring, and worth of further investigation, more research, more sort of exchange with practitioners. There are many people out there. But that's definitely one form of governance I think is very, very important. There's other forms of governance that have been around for quite a while, but have been kind of a niche phenomenon, like cooperatives and stuff like that. And other things, especially in our field and on sustainability, could be, if you look inside the organization, I think bottom-up governance has not yet received a lot of attention. I think that's something very, very interesting when people within the organization even go counter the official strategy, the official governance structures to build up something more sustainable. I see a lot of potential there as well.
Are there any good examples of this that you can point to or use as exemplars in terms of those people that are pushing this performance frontier in a new direction?
Well, I mean, the entire discussion around, I mean, that's really now a grassroots thing within organizations, but if you look at green teams, what they have achieved with eBay, for instance, it's a very interesting setting where eBay basically grants some kind of seed funding and some space, some time, but leaves those organizational members more or less alone to push their own agenda. And sometimes this converges then into the official strategy or the policy of the firm, like when they install solar panels that has been driven by organizational members. Sometimes it doesn't end up in the organizational policy when they do community gardening driven by eBay employees. So, but still, I think on several accounts, this is something that will help us to move towards sustainability, because it opens up new ideas that don't come from the top, but they grow from the bottom, and B, they help organizational members to identify not only with their organization, but also with the idea that organizations can be more sustainable and that people can have their share and their contribution to such a movement.
What types of activities do you see outside of the firm that are enablers of these types of governance models, or for new governance models to take shape and to grow in new ways?
Well, I guess it's a growing consciousness among not only consumers but stakeholders that basically the standard capitalist model of the profit maximizing firm, short-term profit maximization, doesn't always work best, and maybe it works fine with established Western developed countries, but especially in a context where you have transition economies, even developing economies, I think this model is definitely not necessarily a blueprint for success. I think this awareness is growing among actors, be it employees, be it trade unions, be it NGOs, even the politicians, basically say, well, we need to find alternative modes, alternative governance modes that allow people to grow in a sustainable way, grow out of poverty, but also grow their competencies, and to contribute in this way to a more stable, sustainable corporate sector and economy.
Now, we've been kind of talking about this in the context of corporate governance, and you brought to bear there are other organizations that do this. They can be grassroots, they can be nonprofit, but then if we explode this or make this bigger, how do we conceptualize this as an operating system for a whole planet? If we look at this in terms of all the systems within systems, how do we make this bigger? So if we can operationalize this at a organizational level, it can also apply to the larger systems.
Well, to be honest, I'm not sure if there will be one-size-fits-all system model, operating system that will work in all kinds of contexts. Since I'm not sure, especially these grassroots things, I think there's a limit to growth for them. Not that they cannot grow, but if these initiatives grow very fast and grow very strongly, I think they will lose some of their original grassroots characteristics, and because it's getting more and more challenging to have these grassroots activities going on. So I'm not so sure if there is this one operating system that will help us, but I think what will be important is having an open system in terms of open exchange about practices, on experiences, exchange of also of failures, so that people can learn from each other. So the idea of an open governance system in terms of open innovation, open exchange, and open learning within organizations, but also probably even more important among organizations, I think that will be quite important. So the idea of having an open system in place, I think that's something promising for the idea to have as a big picture idea for a more sustainable planet, which then also kind of like matches the metaphor of an operating system. Let's talk about an open operating system, right? Not a closed one.
Also, like now you brought in, growth and limits to growth. Is growth an enabler or an inhibitor of governance?
Well, of course, this all comes back to the question how you find growth. Is it qualitative growth? Is this quantitative growth? Is this standard like turnover growth or profit growth? I think if there are governance systems that help people to grow intellectually with their competencies, with their responsibility, I don't think there's necessarily a conflict with growth. But as I said before, if you talk about growth in terms of an organization wanting to grow at all costs in terms of being like the biggest company in the sector, I don't think there's a good compatibility with sustainability, because then growth becomes an end in itself, and I don't think this is compatible with the idea of sustainability. So take Volkswagen as a car producer. For years now, they have this target of being bigger than Toyota. So what? I mean, why not be the second biggest, but be more innovative and be more sustainable? I don't see the link between like growing as an end in itself and sustainability. I think it's rather detrimental. So yeah, that's quite commonplace, but basically we need to rethink growth in terms of what we mean by growth, and then on the other hand, you need to rethink growth in terms of how important is growth in the end. A certain size might be important to survive, but if you go beyond a certain size, it might be detrimental for inclusive, responsible governance modes. I think, especially if we talk about firms and we want to encourage practitioners to change the operating system, to change their governance modes, I think once more exchange of practice, of good practice, of failures and good practice would be extremely helpful, because I'm pretty convinced that if you talk to many managers and even leaders, but also ordinary organizational members, many of these people share many of our concerns when it comes to limits of growth and unsustainable governance modes and the exaggeration of profit maximization and so on. But they feel that they are caught in a very, very strong restricting system with the everyday rules that they face in their daily work life, and they kind of cannot escape from this stage, if you want to. But the more we create resources that link these people, that they feel, hey, we are not alone. There are more people that think like us. They have similar concerns, so that you can exchange on that. With this as such already, I think will have an empowering effect, because it leaves people, it brings people out of isolation and helps them to join and to develop ideas and alternatives jointly. I think that would be an important starting or kickoff start for defining new governance modes in organizations.